Well, welcome back. Last time around, we looked at Python and the ability to read and write to files. This time, we're going to look at actual properties files. Now, a property file, this is going to prove useful to us in many ways potentially. We can see one like this. Actually, let's rename him config.properties. And this would be a Java style property file. So we can see here, we're going to have a database section. We're going to have a user, password, host, database, and raise on warnings, which would be flags that we actually used before. Let's keep it a little simpler here. And so that's our properties file. Now what we want to do is come over here. And the first thing is we're going to use something we're going to import something that is known as the config parser. And this is going to be a very useful tool. So we're going to try this. It's probably not going to let me, so we're just going to go ahead and code this out, and then we'll come back around and probably have to pip install that. But it's pretty easy to do. Once we've got it, let's call it just the config, and it's going to be equal to config parser dot. Yeah, it's not going to show it, so we'll see here in a second. Raw config parser. Oops. Make sure I got that right. Raw config parser, got that right. And then I can do config.read. And I'm going to give it a name, which is config.properties. And then let's print out, let's see, what I call it, config.get. And I want to get the value of, in the database section, I give it a name, and then I give it a value. What did I call it? Let's call database. Let's do that. And let's do one more, and we'll do the, let's do the host. So if we do that, come in and we run utilities. Oops, let's do this. We're going to take some of these guys out. So let's take these. Yeah, take all of that. Actually, let's do fine test. It's going to be that. And now we won't even bother with it. It's just a great way to comment out code. Is now what we can do is we can basically say IO test. We're going to define it out, and it's going to skip this. And we don't need to call it at all. Because what we'll see here, oops. It's not going to like it because that probably, there we go. Got to have a, so now let's go back here. And we use utilities. We can see there's no module. So that means we're going to do is pip3 install config parser. Whoops. And hopefully that's the name. There we go. So it comes in and installed it. If you remember back, we had to do a couple of those early on. So we're going to add that one in. Now if we run it, whoops. Okay, but this again, where I gotta make sure I'm using the right. It used to be config parser, capital C, capital P. With Python 3, it is actually lowercase and is no longer raw config parser. It's going to be just config parser. So if we take that, so if we loaded that guy in, there we go. So we picked it up, we're going to read it, and we're going to print out the database in the host. And if we run that, then we read in the properties, and then we've got the database and the host name. Now, there are other ways that we can pull stuff in rather quickly, but in this case, that's the hello world. Skip that. In this case, this gives us something pretty straightforward that we can work with. You could actually, if you wanted to be simple about it, is, let's take this, and this could be actually wait, let me duplicate it. Let's see, I think I can do a Control-C. There we go. And now let's rename them. Instead, call him config.py. And then we could just do it like, there's a couple ways we could do it, but oh, shoot, I'm in the wrong file. But what you could do is come into config.py. If you wanted to keep it very simple, just like this, we do have to change it just a little bit because that's got to be a string. That's going to be a string. That's going to be, they're actually all going to be a string, my mistake. So now what we've got is just 4 variables we're setting. And guess what? We could, let's call this execute properties. Let's see, or just, yeah, let's call it execute properties. And then we're just going to have it print database and host. So there's a couple ways we can do this. Let's see. And then config. And basically that's going to execute that file. And we're going to see, same thing. See here, so we have those 2 there, or we can just execute. So if you want to do something for file I/O, as we've seen, if you want to do logging, then or something like that, where you want to write out for a variety of reasons, maybe it's a report or something like that, then you can do so. With the file I/O that we looked at between open, you can open for read, write, append. You can do it binary, so you could use it essentially as like a database kind of structure and then read that stuff back in. You can also do configuration stuff, which is probably your most common way that you're going to do it. So you can either do something sort of the Java style, or you can actually make it really simple and then just have a config that executes sets up these values for you. And then when you import it, it's going to be that name. It's going to, where'd we go here? If you see, we import, and if you don't give it a .py, it's going to assume that. So I'm going to import config. It's going to look for config.py. And then it's going to look in the config file, basically in its scope. It's going to look for the variable database, which is right here. And it's going to look for the variable host, which is right there. So I could also do something like, let's go back to, where's the original one? Oh, that's utilities. Where did I put it? Oh, I'll have to put it over here. So if we go back to our original stuff, where we had the config, then we could take within config, let's just call this db props. So now we've got a dictionary here. And so if we are going to do config.db props, let's do the same thing, except for, let's do that first. Let's just do db props. And you can see that it kicks that whole thing out for us. The other thing we can do is, because it's a dictionary, where did I put that? There it is. Then we could do, let's see, db props database. except for now it's a key. And, oops, let me do it this way. Let me do the whole properties first. So it's a little easier to see. So, yeah, took a second for it to look at it. And so, if you want something real easy as far as loading properties, storing values, things like that, which this is a good example. If you want to use your database configuration or any other kind of configuration, if you're building an API and you need a user ID and password or something like that, you can store those as files, and you can actually just execute them as a Python, and you're off and running. Or you can do something like a file, like a properties file, where you can come in and try to pick it up that way. But in either case, you've got a simple way to store files and write them back. Now, if you want to do something a little more out of the box, I guess, since we're working on a few command line things, let's look at one other. We can look at some system commands, and those are a little bit, there's a couple different ways you can do it. It's evolved over time, but in our case, since we're essentially Python 3, 3.5 and beyond, we're going to use the most recent. And that thing is actually going to be called, I'm sorry, not system, that's what it used to be. It's going to be subprocess.run. And let's just do, like a ls. And we're going to send it to the shell. And let's print, let's not call it output, let's call it result. And then we're going to print the result. And let's see if we probably need to load that guy too. Let's check him real quick. Oh, let's do my other favorite here. Let's do real quick. Property example. Whoops. I don't want to delete it. I want to move it. There we go. And actually, if you want to see it, then we can always do system commands. How far is it? There we go. And so now, and then we're just going to come down here and we're going to call and if we run it, so we're going to see this it's outputting it to the shell, and this is the process that came back. Is that it completed? Here's what the argument was. Here's what the return code was. So if we wanted to do, let's change this around a little bit. Let's just make an ls, and you can do all kinds of neat little stuff with it. So you can add parameters and stuff like that. Shell equals false. Let's take a look at that one. Let's see. Oh, my mistake. First, let's do it this way. There you go, because it's got to send it to the shell. Otherwise, it would not send it. It's going to go somewhere else, depending on where you want to send it to. So we can come in, we can send some arguments. We can do, let's just do something simple. Where'd we go? Actually, we can do something really fun, like we could actually run Python. Let's just do a ps-ef grep Python, and let's see what's running Python at this moment. And Boy, some of these are really big and long. Oh, this is because this is what this thing is running on me. But you can see here, generally speaking, that we've got it's the utilities that we're running, the actual command. We do the, which is binary shell, and it's going to do the ps-ef, and then of course that's the grep Python. So you're going to see those sort of break out, and you can track them down if you really wanted to. But the important thing here is I'm going to see a completed process. Now, if I do, let's do it this way, just to show you one more thing. So let's take this same thing and look at that result. And I'm going to run foobar, which I'm assuming is not going to work. And now let's see what happens. And what you're going to see here is that I get a command not found, and I get an actual return code that is not 0, which is success. And instead, I can see what the args are and whether it's completed process or not. So I could look at, let me go, where did it go back here? So I could say, here instead of the result, I can say if results return code. If it equals 0, then I'm going to print success. Else I'm going to do command failed. There, I'll throw a couple extra exclamation points. Now, so this is going to be the fail. And you're going to see here that we still, because we sent it to the shell, we see that here, but we get a command failed. So we could, for example, if we were in a view where normally you're not going to see the console output, we could actually capture some return codes and send something back to a user on the website. So there you go. I played around a little bit with some of the input and output as far as properties, executing a Python file to just quickly load something up. Again, makes it really easy. You don't have to compile or anything. It's just boom, you're off and running. And that will do it for this little session. We are going to swing probably back into Django stuff next time around. Just want to get a couple of these Python things out of the way, and we'll probably start working on some front-end prettying of our application. So as always, go out there and have yourself a great day, and we will see you next time.